Hi, my name is Richard Harbich. I'm a Microsoft MVP and the CTO of a company called TutorLead. And I wanted to share with you another announcement from Microsoft Inspire. This particular one is one that I wanted to share for two reasons. One, I think a lot of people underestimate the value of it and don't really fully utilize it. And two, I think for a lot of people, they're not aware of just how much change has happened within it. And that is the Microsoft Teams webinar capabilities.
TutorLead is a remote-first company based out of Canada.
What makes a world-class Microsoft 365 intranet and digital workplace?
So one of the reasons I'm highlighting this is because I run into this question all the time with customers where they, intranet owners and other organizing parties within the organization who, host a lot of communication, support a lot of events coordination. What they often do is they say, we need a way to kind of have a registration for events, especially virtual events. And if that's the instance, then I always say, well, you actually have that with Microsoft Teams, specifically Teams webinars, because you can have these, pages where people can sign up, you can have questions and things like that they fill out when they sign up, and then they can attend it, and it's, all managed through the Teams experience. And so the first thing I want to note is that is an option that I think more customers need to explore, the ability to use Microsoft Teams webinars to essentially improve employee experiences when it comes to virtual events, organizing and preparing for them and things of that nature. It's also really relevant to note that not every event is virtual. Some events are still in person. So it's useful to have resources like this particular one. Let me share my screen for a second, where you see the employee training and events registration app or experience. So this is an example where it's ready to go. You can go and install and build it in your own environment, where essentially you have the ability to have these events. They can have a number of slots available, and then you can manage registration and the event itself. This is great for hybrid events, in-person events, and still technically those remote events if you really want to tailor and customize the experience around how this works. Of course, this could all be rolled up into, say, a SharePoint intranet or something like that. But the overall concept is there are solutions out there that are sort of freely available that enable you to have a better events experience that don't necessarily require you to go and build something totally from scratch or to buy third party. But speaking of employee events and the webinar experiences, let's talk a little bit more about those. So you can see in this particular slide, we have a picture of the creation process. So when you create one of these webinars, you can fill out a variety of pieces of information. And one of the challenges historically was we couldn't necessarily highlight presenters effectively, right? We would just have, these are the people, and it'd be some names. Now we actually have the ability to organize this where we can have bios for those presenters. While this is a minor thing when you're registering for an event, a lot of the reasons people actually attend events and are interested is based on the speakers. They might want to hear that particular person. And so things that help them understand who this person is or connect with that speaker before and after the event, these are all things that we need to provide a better experience for. And it's great to see Microsoft including that in the baseline capability of Teams webinars. In addition to that, you can also see that there's some more tailoring experiences around look and feel to make the events, just resonate a little bit more cleanly. And then that plays in both email formats when you see the event and you reserve it to the page itself when you go to attend the event. From a Teams perspective. This is what I meant by you can create these sort of registration pages within the Teams experience. That's exactly what's being done here. Now, another interesting thing about this is that you can manage capacity. Capacity is both increasing for Teams webinars, and more importantly, perhaps, you have the ability to create forms with specialized questions. So things like the ability to add legal terms, very helpful, so that you've acknowledged, hey, I've read this. When I watch this, I'm aware. Maybe I'm recorded if I speak up in open Q&A, or things like for the recording that you're seeing sensitive data and that you are responsible, right, as a steward of that information that you're going to be receiving. So really, really wonderful capability. Again, if you never used this before, the ability to ask these kinds of questions, very, very helpful for registrations. And again, internally you might have less questions, but again, for some internal scenarios, this is very relevant as well. Please don't just use Teams webinars for external events. They're very useful for internal as well. A thing I really like is that they also show you the ability of who's canceled. their registration. So maybe they registered and they canceled. Very useful insight. And then, of course, we have a variety of ways of getting reporting. Now, if you use something like Dynamics, if you're using the sort of a connected experience, you're going to get a lot of this through Dynamics Marketing. But if you're not using those types of things, or it's an internal event, very, very helpful to have this sort of deep insight into, who the attendees were, when they left, how long were they in the meeting, all those things at a glance available for you to download, to share, to utilize in a variety of ways. In addition to those things, Q&A being embedded with a really nice Q&A experience where you can sort of acknowledge things, you can comment on them, you can have, again, this sort of reaction, which might help you rank things a little bit better. All these things are really, really helpful when we talk about running these kinds of live events. So further incentivizing us to potentially benefit greatly from using Teams Webinar for those internal virtual events. That's essentially what I wanted to make sure I showed you guys today, is that there's a lot more you can do with Teams webinars. I think more people should use them. And even if, Teams webinars you've heard of before, I'm hopeful that today the discussions and framing that I shared around, these employee training and employee event experiences where you can have registration even for in-person events, there's a way to do that that's also Teams oriented. Just as sort of a subtle reminder, that's at m365ideas.com. You can download that ebook, and then that'll redirect you to it, or you can just look in GitHub for these solutions, and many of them are available, as a starting point, and then you can further extend them and build them the way you want. So with that, I hope that was helpful for you. I hope you get yourself a chance to play with Microsoft Teams webinars and you enjoy them as much as we do. With that, have a wonderful day.